Hello. All right, so we're still in Chapter 2, Net Income for Business Math. So this is Lesson 2.3, Graduated State Income Tax. So we just went through, we did federal income tax, which is FIT, and then Section 2 was state income tax, which they'll also start referring to as SIT, S-I-T. And now we're going to do graduated state income tax. So graduated, we've heard this term before. It just means that there are pieces that we have to calculate. So we graduate from one level to the next, basically, and each level gets a different percentage. So this one is definitely going to have some pieces to it. Make sure you're reading the chapters, of course, and going through the explanations, going through the different formulas they give you. They don't always give you everything you need on these worksheets, so make sure you're paying attention. So here we have some states have a graduated income tax that involves a different tax rate for each of the several levels of income. The tax rate increases as income increases. So it's not just a flat rate like what we did in Section 2. Now we're going to be doing graduated. So each level gets a different tax rate. The more you make, the more you pay. So tax rate or tax withheld per pay period is the annual tax withheld divided by the number of pay periods. So they're not actually explaining to you how to use these tables. They're explaining to you how to do the second part of the equation. So we're going to use the graduated state tax table and personal allowances table below to answer the questions. So we have the state taxes, taxable wages. So the first $1,000 is 1.5%. The next $2,000 is 3%. The next $2,000 is 4.5%. Over $5,000 is 5%. So we have 4 levels that we have to take into account here. We also have to take into account personal allowances. So this was also part of the Section 2.2 where you had to make sure you're paying attention. Are they married? Are they single? Do they have dependents? So let's go ahead and look at problem number 1. Herb Awanda is a computer operator for Database Inc. He earns $38,600 per year. He is single and is paid on a weekly basis. How much is withheld from his weekly paycheck for state taxes? So since they're not talking about dependents, we're assuming he doesn't have any because they didn't tell us about them. So first, before you start calculating this graduated part, take away the allowances because that makes our taxable income lower. It's what we're allowed to take away first. So $38,600, we're going to take away his allowance. So he's single with no other dependents, so he only gets to take away $2,000. So it ends up being $36,600. So this is his taxable income. Now we have to take into account these steps. So the way I like to do it, just to kind of show you the pieces here, is break it into pieces. So we have 36,600 equals, so I know there's 1,000 there definitely. There's the next 1,000. Oops, I didn't need to put a comma. So it's supposed to be a plus. So there's the next 2,000. I did a comma again. And the next 2,000. So we have 1,000, the next 2,000, so now we're up to 3,000. The next 2,000, so now we're up to 5,000 total. So you keep moving to the next piece. And then anything over this 5,000 is taxed at 5%. So plus the rest of it, basically it's just this amount minus 5,000, which is 31,600. Sorry, going off the paper a little bit there. All right, so each piece is multiplied a different amount. So the first 1,000 is 1.5%. This first 2,000 is 3%. So we're going to multiply it by 3%. This second 2,000 is 4.5%. So we'll multiply by that. And then this big chunk here is 5%. All right, so we're going to multiply each piece and we're going to bring it down. So 1,000 times 1.5 is 15. 2,000 times 3% is 60. And then 2,000 times 4.5% is 90. 31,600 times 5% is 1,580. So we want to add all of those together. And we get 1,745. So remember, this is annual. This is all year long. But they said, whoops, I didn't mean to cross it off. They said weekly here. So we need to divide by 52. And that's going to get us $33.56 per week. So this is the answer they're looking for, $33.56. How much is going to be withheld every week in state income taxes? All right, so each one of these, you're going to do that exact same process. They're going to give you a total amount, and you need to subtract your allowances first, and then take that and break it up. If you notice, as long as you have more than $5,000 in annual income, the first three are going to be the same. 1.5% of 1,000 is always 15. 3% of 2,000 is always 60. 4.5% of 2,000 is always 90. So those three pieces aren't going to change. You're always going to be adding 15 plus 60 plus 90, as long as you have more than $5,000 in annual income, which I don't think any one of these worked out to be less than that, honestly. So the end part is the part that's going to change. So you want to take your taxable income once you calculate that, subtract your 5,000 from it, and multiply by 5%. And then you'll add 90 plus 60 plus 15 each time. Because again, you're always going to have more than 5,000 in these problems. So if that was a little bit confusing, just hearing that out loud, you can always write it out each time. But hopefully you'll start to notice this pattern of these three repeat each time. They're the same three numbers. All you really need to do is calculate that last one and add it in to the 15, 60, and 90. Make sure you're dividing by the number that's appropriate. So this one's monthly, you'll divide by 12, right? Bi-weekly, that means every 2 weeks. If there's 52 weeks in a year, so that's normally what we divide by for weekly, well, it would mean that we divide by 26 in this case, because 52 divided by 2 is 26. So this one is bi-weekly again. They just kind of put it up here. Bi-weekly, how much is withheld from each paycheck for the state income taxes. So make sure you're just reading through and paying attention to the little details there. Let's see. This one is monthly. So that's the only one I'm noting on that one. All right, let's move to the second page here so we can finish this up. So we have same thing. Nothing really is changing at all on these pages. Ooh, can get rid of that. So we're doing the same thing. They're giving us a gross pay. We're going to go through, subtract our allowances, and then calculate the graduated pieces of our state income tax. Let's see. I don't think... So the only thing that changes a little bit on number 8 is it says, using the information from the previous problem, what would be the difference between the amount withheld for 2 dependents and the amount withheld for 4? So in number 7, you're going to calculate it based on 4 dependents. So you've already calculated part of this problem withheld for 4. You're going to recalculate the same exact one for only 2 dependents. And then you're going to have 2 answers there. So this is the amount withheld for 4 dependents. This is the amount withheld for 2 dependents. How much more is withheld if you take those 2 dependents away? Because you have less dependents, it means you have more taxable income, right? We weren't allowed to take as much away for the allowances. So you're just going to calculate it again, exact same problem. You're taking less away for your allowances. And then you're going to subtract the 2 amounts at the end to see how much more is going to get withheld based on state taxes. All right, let's go ahead and look at this algebra 1 so that we can kind of get through that one. So remember, algebra doesn't necessarily mean more difficult. It just means that you have to think about, what did we learn? How do we apply it? So Deanna Worley is the office manager at Central Bioenergy. She is married, so that's important. She has 1 dependent with her annual graduated state income tax at $33,520. What is her semi-monthly salary? So in semi-monthly, that hasn't come up in a little bit. So semi-monthly means twice a month. It's different than bi-weekly. Bi-weekly means every 2 weeks. Semi-monthly means twice a month. So remember, there are not 4 weeks in every month. I know some students make that mistake. So it doesn't mean it's every 2 weeks when you think of the 4. It's a little bit farther spread out than that. So usually it's like the 1st and the 15th, or the 15th and the 30th, something like that. So it's twice a month instead of literally every 2 weeks. So we need to think about, what do we know and what do we want? So we want, what is her semi-monthly salary? Woof! Stumbled on that one a little bit. So let me see, what variable do we want? So let's first work on her annual salary, and then we'll divide it down to be semi-monthly, okay? So her annual salary, because we don't know that either, let's make that S. So we're going to find her annual salary. Once we find this, then we can divide it down to figure out what her semi-annual salary is. So we'll have one more step after we find out what S is. So we already know how much she pays in state income taxes, right? They told us graduated state income taxes is $3,520. And we know how to calculate state income taxes, right? We have 5%, and if I kind of switch over here, so remember, the 5% is the part that we're more worried about, because the first 3 pieces are always the same. This 15, 60, 90, it's not going to change unless you're below the total annual salary of $5,000. It's not going to change. You're going to have those 3 things. So we're more worried about the 5% right now. So we know it's going to be 5% of whatever her annual payment is, minus, let's see, $6,000. Sorry, I forgot about her allowances. I almost forgot about her allowances. Because remember, she's married, that's $4,000. And she has one dependent, that's another $2,000. So we get to take $6,000 away right off the top before we calculate anything. That's where the $6,000 came from. And then we also get to take away $5,000, because remember, that's the 15, the 60, the 90. That's already been calculated. Those are the first 3 steps of the graduated levels. So we're only going to multiply 5% by what's left over here. And then we're going to add in the 15, the 60, and the 90, which if you add those together, you get 165. Okay, so you're always going to add 165, again, unless your annual income is less than $5,000. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. So these parentheses here they don't truly mean anything other than we were just grouping. This is her taxable income. So we can kind of drop those away, and we can add some like terms here. So 35,000 or 3,520 equals 5% of her salary minus, and 6,000 minus 5,000, that gets us 11,000 plus 165. So now we're going to distribute this 5% here. So 5%. So 5% times S is just 5% S, minus 5% of 11,000 is, well, write notes here, $550, and then plus 160. Once I distribute this 5%, I can drop the parentheses. I don't need to have them there anymore. There's no reason for them. So now I can combine some like terms again, can't I? So 5% of her salary minus 550 is bigger than 165, so I know I'm going to end up with a minus. So, when you have positive and negative, you subtract just like you normally would, and just whichever number is bigger, you use that number sign. So it's a negative 550, so I'm going to use negative. So it's negative 385. So now I'm getting down to the 2-step equation part, where it looks a little bit more familiar to most students at this point. So we're going to add 385 to both sides. And let's see, we get 3,905. Yep, equals 5% of S. And I tend to write 5% in S for whatever reason I do, but remember 5% is actually 0.05. That's how you want to type it into your calculator. Or you can always do this. Most calculators have, whoops, didn't mean to click on other stuff there. So most calculators have this percent symbol here, and you can go 5%. Look at that, it did it for me. So super easy there. So our last step here is just simply divide by our 5%. Boop. So 33,905 divided by 5%, and we will get 78,100 equals S. So this is her annual salary. Remember, this is how much she makes total. That's not what they asked us to do. Semi-monthly. So we need to take this amount and divide by something. So if there's 12 months in a year, and I'm getting semi-monthly, meaning twice a month, I'm going to multiply by 2. So that means I'm going to get 24 payments a year. So that's what semi-monthly means, 24 payments a year. So I'm going to take this amount and I'm going to divide by 24. And that'll tell me what her semi-monthly payments are. So it'll give me that end answer I'm looking for. So 78,100 is part of the answer. It's not the completed answer though. So make sure, I'm going to let y'all do that last calculation there. All you have to do is divide by 24 and you'll have your answer. So I hope that helped, and I will see you in section 4.